Good morning and welcome to Johannesburg, a city I love, a city I grew up in. Small little complaint, we've never actually had a white Christmas here in Johannesburg. Two good reasons for that. We are in the southern hemisphere, so Christmas is very inconsiderately placed in the middle of summer. The other problem we have with snow here is that winters aren't really that wintry. I mean, it's middle of winter right now, and however, this is a little childhood gap I'd love to fill, a little childhood hole I'd love to fill. A snowy day, proper snow. Now, there has been snow warnings, not here in Johannesburg, but in the mountains, in a town called Clarens, 330 kilometers in that direction. So, we're about to take an epic voyage, 330 kilometers, for the quest for snow. Yes, a 330 kilometer quest for snow. Sounds simple, except the bike we are using is... That's right, it's a 390, a KTM 390 Adventure to be more specific. The reason we are using a 390 for our journey is to see if it can. The 390 is KTM's first attempt at a small adventure bike, and it has been cited by many on social media as nothing more than a sort of commuter that can hop the occasional pavement. However, in our eternal quest to prove trolls wrong, can it instead travel through the vastness of the Free State, over long and potholed roads, and into the mountains in order to find our snowy goal? To start, KTM has made use of a motor they are rather good at building, and a motor we know well. It's the single-cylinder 373cc liquid-cooled one from their famous 390 Duke, pushing exactly the same 43 horsepower. 43 horsepower may be a lot for this class, but I was kind of worried that it would be able to kind of cruise at the speed limit without revving too much. However, when we were back at Joburg, when I first got on the freeway, I was accelerating along and sort of concentrating on changing lanes, sort of not concentrating on how I'm accelerating. I looked down and suddenly saw I'm doing 155 kilometers an hour, and I thought, oops, oh well, that answers that. Beyond the motor, it shares very little with its naked Duke kin. It's taller, more plasticed, and has bits that make the long straighty roads more tolerable. The seat's a little bit hard, but by no means the hardest I've ever sat on an adventure bike. The position's good. I feel good. I mean, you're sitting very upright. This is how I would sit normally if I were like this. Bars are in the perfect position. The screen, I believe it's adjustable using spanners, but I'm not even going to try because I'll break it, because I'm bad at spanners. And it's a little breezy, but I'm not getting blown away. So, yeah, again, I've had much worse. Only thing I was worried about is it's a single. Singles can be a little buzzy, and this is a little buzzy, especially when you're accelerating in town. That made me a bit worried. But once you kind of get to cruising speed on the freeway, the buzzing in the bars kind of goes away, and you feel a bit of vibration going through the foot pegs, which I was worried about at first. But as I went along, I kind of forgot about it. However, little vibrations don't really bug me so much, but if you are somebody with feet like a record player, that might irritate you. As far as the switches and the dash are concerned, it's like they went into a skip and found the old stuff from the old 1190 KTM, which nowadays is kind of simple, but it all works. You know, the list of options to look at is not the most, but you got a TFT dash on bikes like this. I mean, TFT dash were like sort of top shelf stuff previously. Now we're getting it on the kind of more affordable motorcycles, so that's a victory. And the buttons on the bars work and everything's fine. The Free State roads carried on, and the 390 was happy to cruise between 130 and 140 kilometers per hour. It was then that we came across the famous town of Maritzburg, where, as is my obvious birthright, I declared my sovereignty. Bow down before me, peasants! I am your lord! And then sat on my royal throne. We then proceeded on, with the road beginning to twist through the Drakensberg Mountains, until I arrived at the quaint town of Clarens. Naturally, because I'm now a monarch,
I slept in a castle, and then dawn happened. Okay, so disappointingly the sun is out and there's no snow anywhere. Although it is freezing cold this morning. I mean, it was -9 just a moment ago, and well, the peaks around here aren't quite that peaky. Apparently, if we head that way, there's some really properly tall ones, and that's where the snow should be. With that, I defrosted the 390 and made way to the mountains yonder. And obviously, my logic provided, the best way to get to a mountain top is to take a dirt road. So I found one of those. Now there's plenty of reasons to exclude the 390 from the Elite Off-Road Adventure Club, such as the lack of spoked wheels, a front wheel that is only 19 inches, and componentry that isn't exactly off the top shelf. But none of that really matters.
Now, what this bike does not feel like is an adventure bike. And what I mean by that is adventure bikes are normally huge monstrosities. And when you're going over tricky, slippery bits of dirt like this, you could feel it, especially on these tires. These are sort of not full knobblies. And there's some loose stones, and I can feel that on a big adventure bike. I'll be going a little bit now. There'd be some clenching, but it's just so light and nippy. It's 158 kilograms dry, but that doesn't tell the story. I mean, it feels a lot lighter than that. It hasn't got the greatest suspension control. You can feel that you're on a dirt road. You can feel everything through the bars, through foot pegs, through the seat. Because it's a simple little creature. 177 mils of travel, that's not the most. You get bikes with a lot more than that, but it's sort of okay, you know? You kind of understand this is what you're getting. And if you hit the big bumps, it will bottom out, but the bike hasn't broken in half, and more importantly, I haven't broken in half yet, so that's good. Mind you, if you really want to get technical, these front forks have got little knobs on the top, and you can adjust damping to make it more comfortable. That is space-aged in this class. The others don't have that. The other thing this has that others don't have in this class is traction control. But 43 horsepower, you really don't need it. One thing it is a single, so below sort of 3,000 RPM it starts getting quite snatchy. So you got to work the gearbox a little bit, but luckily the low gears, first and second, are very low, so at no point are you kind of struggling. And this is a bike you feel confident on, you know, this road is not overwhelming you, it never will. I mean, anybody can ride this thing, it feels easy. There's got to be snow here somewhere. There's got to be. We're up really high now. Ah, damn it, that's a dead end. Okay. Peaks are still all over there. Some really high peaks there. We're a long way from those, but this road isn't going there. Now I've got to try and make a U-turn, and normally every time I try and make a U-turn I kind of fall over easily, but yeah, there we go. Turning, I haven't fallen over. I'm most of the way through it, and hey, there we go. Haha, that's awesome. If I were on a normal adventure bike right now, I'd be on my side, sobbing massively, but hey, I'm still going.
With the dirt road proving to be a failure and the mountain tops being ever more elusive, I decided to stop being a man and ask for some directions, where I learned that there's a perfectly good tar road heading up the mountains. With that, I Isle of Manned it on my 390. Kinda.
Now, Johannesburg is already very high. I mean, we're 1,600 meters above sea level. That is a mile above sea level, which means a lot less oxygen, which means a lot less performance. On the bigger bikes, you feel it, but on the small ones, you really feel it. Yeah, I can definitely feel the thing's not 43 horsepower anymore. Definitely not. I'm struggling to pull 6th gear, but it's okay. It's got very sort of low bottom gear, so it's easy. You spend most of your time in 5th. Now, just like off-road, this doesn't feel like an adventure bike. It's small, you know, it's got most of the adventure qualities, but none of the sort of hugeness. So it's really nippy. It's still very simple. I mean, you can feel, you know, suspension isn't quite as sort of plush as it could be, more sophisticated. The motor's like slightly rough, but it sort of doesn't matter because it's just so light and easy to ride. Gearbox works well. I believe you can get a quick shifter option. This one hasn't got it, but you know, it's not completely smooth, but you're not missing gears anywhere. It's brilliant. Down a gear, light, into corner, turn. Oh, wonderful. The brakes work. That sounds a little sort of condescending, but very often on bikes coming from India, they don't work that well. And they do that on purpose, apparently, I'm told. Where a lot of the people in India don't like the brakes all that sharp for some reason, so they turn it down. But these ones, yep, they're not Brembo monoblocks, but they stop.
As the road wound higher, it got ever narrower and ever steeper, while the little motor started struggling a bit in the thinner air.
Okay, well, there's got to be snow here somewhere. We've got to be getting close. We're high up now. We're really high up. The peaks are just there. Whoa, that wind is harsh. It almost feels like the front wheel's flat, like the bike's sort of moving. My eyes are watering. That is beautiful. That is really beautiful.
And yet, there was still no snow. Until...
Come take a look, come take a look. Snow, it's actual snow. Admittedly it's not a lot, but well, it's probably the smallest amount of snow ever seen on the ground, but it's snow, we found it, we found it.
Obviously, it pays to be humble and professional when dealing with so little snow.
Building a snowman, part it together, build a body, then okay, it's a snow ant. There's a snow ant. There it is. You can see it. It's smiling. It's got a cat for a nose. Haha! Snowball! Ow! Snow angel! Something smells funny. Snow angel! Okay, it's cold. I can't feel anything. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go now. Yeah.
Snow angel, frost fairy more like. That's quite ambitious calling that snow, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt since he worked so hard on his quest. I have to say 100% for effort. It looked pretty cold and very windy, so I think that whole end of his story is more a case of the hypothermia beginning to bite and insanity creeping up on him. So yeah, I'm sure he will be back again next week, but once he's warmed up, he'll be fine, I'm sure. Okay, then let's consider, even if he failed in his quest to find snow, which he did, he found frost, let's not beat around the bush. He did manage to prove, I think, that the KTM adventure bike, the 390, the smallest one, is actually a viable long-distance touring bike. So well done on that score. Let's then take a look at some of its competition. If you're in the market for what is a fairly recent addition to motorcycling, these small adventure bikes, then what else could you possibly look at? Well, how about the obvious one being BMW's G310 GS? This actually came along before KTM's small adventure bike. Now, it doesn't seem to make any sense to me. The 390 street bike from KTM had been around for ages. They seem to be slow off the mark getting an adventure bike out there. So BMW beat them with the legendary GS name. Obviously, this is just an updated reworked version of the G310R, which is the street naked bike. So in terms of competition, you're looking at nearly 10 horsepower less. It's about 33, 34 horsepower, I think. It's smaller capacity, obviously. It does, in fact, have a pretty weedy front brake. The instrumentation is nowhere near as good. And for me, the build quality isn't a match for the KTM either. If you want to go Japanese, then the one that's on sale in South Africa and has been for a while, since 2016 I think, is Kawasaki's Versys 300X. That's just had a facelift, makes it even more of a viable option. It's got a parallel twin, that one, instead of the single cylinder engines we've been looking at, which means it's very, very smooth and quite top endy. It likes to be revved, which is good for road work. It is, again, genuinely useful for long distance touring on the road. But off-road, because of the need for revs, not quite as good as the slightly more grunty single-cylinder motors. It does make about 40 horsepower though, so as I say, on motorways actually quite viable. You could also think, if you're in the market for this sort of thing, and you want to do, you know, as much hardcore off-road as you possibly can, then go the route of something like Honda's CRF 250L, which I have to say is a little bit expensive for what it offers, I think. You'll have to check the latest prices yourself. But that's basically a dual sport bike that's been made road-friendly, where the others are all road bikes, which have, you know, been adapted to handle a little bit of dirt. So that means it's got proper suspension travel, really does handle the off-road stuff well. Unfortunately, with it being a 250, it also only makes about 24 horsepower, I think, which means it's very, very slow and hard work on the road. Take you a long time to get wherever you're going for your off-road adventure. And because it's adapted as well from off-road use, it also has a very small petrol tank, which is a bit of a hindrance when you want to go touring. If you're thinking about this class and it's based on price and you don't mind going a kind of retro, old school looking way, then there's always Royal Enfield. They've got a model called the Himalayan. It's got a single cylinder engine again, I think 411 cc's in this case. And although it is heavy, it will quite happily trundle along soft roading if you like. Looks the part, quite comfortable on road. Again, it's way, way down on horsepower. You're looking, despite the larger capacity, it's about 24, 25 horsepower once again. So yeah, you'll be adventuring, but just very, very slowly. Definite alternative though, the Royal Enfield. So yeah, bear that in mind. If you look overall, then I think, as Don and I have both discussed, it's pretty obvious that at the moment, if you want a small capacity adventure bike that's the best compromise both for on-road and off-road, that offers the best level of technology, the best fit and finish, and the most attractive TFT dash, and feels like a big bike just made a little bit smaller, then KTM is the way to go. And tenuous link this, but if you're staying in the market for a KTM and you fancy a second-hand bike, how about this? One careful owner, a lot of crashes, but looked after by the factory, no expense spared. Yes, it is a KTM RC16. That is the MotoGP bike. They're offering two of these bikes. Both we think are Pol Espargaro's bikes from the 2019, last year's season. So right bang up to date, which means you're looking at around 300 horsepower in a sport bike, which is just inconceivable. Price is a bit steep. It is a bit steep, there's no getting around it. It's just under 290,000 euros, which means for South Africans about 5.8 million rand. Yeah. So I don't think there are many of you watching this, and I certainly won't be putting in a bid for it, but perhaps one or two of you might. And if one comes to South Africa, give a go. I'd really love a go. And on that begging, pleading note, time to take a break.